The breaking news that we're hearing is coming out of the U.S. In the U.S. city of Baltimore, a major bridge has collapsed into the water after being struck by a cargo ship. The vessel caught fire on impact, and the vehicles that are seen on the bridge sank into the water, as did the bridge. Baltimore police say that workers might be in the water right now. It's unclear how many people have been injured. Okay, we'll bring you more on this as soon as we get information. This is the latest footage of that moment coming out of Baltimore in the U.S.
Happy Sunday and welcome to The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is Sunday, March 31st, 2024. Happy Easter, if you celebrate that. If you're in the middle of Ramadan, hopefully that's going well. I know there's a Jewish holiday that's sort of in between now and Passover, or sometimes Passover and Easter collide. I was flipping the TV last night and saw the Ten Commandments on. So it made me think about all those times around Easter sitting around watching the Ten Commandments. But let's get to it. Val Atkinson is here. Hey, Val.
Hello, Ed.
People didn't see this morning. Val had new patent leather shoes that he got for Easter to go with his Easter suit. But again, if you do celebrate Easter, we hope that your services went well, or your Easter egg hunt, or whatever you do. Hey, Val, I'm not going to waste time in the intro, in the montage. The last thing that came up was the bridge collapse in Baltimore. I've been over that Key Bridge a lot. I'm sure you have too. I was over the bridge about a month ago, driving across it, and to see it collapse is very, stark, and sort of you see the trucks zooming across, and they're just getting off in enough time, before the whole thing collapses. Let's talk about, first things first, infrastructure in the country. One of the reasons why places like the Key Bridge and then the bridge that collapsed up in Pennsylvania and right at the beginning of Joe Biden's term and are so important is that we just haven't been able to keep up with infrastructure. We don't spend the money. The guy that used to live at Pennsylvania Avenue, 1600, Donald Trump, he had infrastructure week every week, and they had no infrastructure spending. And then, of course, the Biden administration passes some infrastructure spending. The money is starting to get out. They're saying that they're pledging at least $60 million to get this bridge back open into Baltimore. So let's go there first, Val. The infrastructure in the U.S., I know the infrastructure bill got passed, but there's so much more to do, right? There's so many more people, whatever, blah, blah, blah. What's your assessment of number one, what's going on in Baltimore and whether or not the country still has the will and sort of fortitude to go ahead and move ahead with infrastructure that needs to happen, like replacing all these bridges?
Yeah, I agree, Ed. First of all, I've traveled that bridge, across that bridge, several times. There's a Polish restaurant in Dundalk that used to sell the best half smokes I've ever had to cross my lips. And I'm a half smoked guy. Ended up at Ben's Chili Bowl now is where I go to get the best half smokes. But back during the day, back in the 70s and late 60s, I used to go over to Dundalk to eat some of those half smokes. So I went across that bridge several times while I was in the Baltimore, D.C. area. And I took special interest because the first thing I wanted to know when I heard about the incident was what caused it. Have they found the equivalent of the black box or whatever? And when they came out and had a recording that found out that somebody had said, "Hey, I've lost my steering capability," that was a little before they sent out the Mayday. I said, okay, good. It seemed not to have been obvious sabotage or whatever it still could have been, but it took out the possibility, was this a weakened structure or whatever that should have been repaired? eons ago or whatever. That still may have been the case, but in this particular case, it was inability to steer the vessel properly to go under that bridge instead of hitting the abutment and those sorts of things. But it still doesn't excuse the fact that many of our bridges and most of our infrastructure throughout the nation is in ill repair and needs to have something done about it. And it may not be a ship or vessel hitting a ship, a bridge abutment at any point in the future, but our bridges and other infrastructure items are in such a bad state, Ed, that we better do something very soon, sooner than later, or we're going to hear a lot more about this kind of thing, and unfortunately, a lot more people are going to lose their lives than lost their life, unfortunately, in this particular incident. So this is sort of a red flag warning. Hey, let's start doing something about our infrastructure. Let's fix it now more than later. And one thing you can't do, you can't say everybody's up for their own in this battle. If you want a free bridge or a good bridge, you got to build it. Pay it for yourself or you're going to lose it. So Trump's ideas won't work. You got to have the us and the we to override the I in order to fix things like bridges.
Yeah, most definitely. You know, you alluded to it a little bit in your comments about you know, what the real cause was. Here's a clip. There were some people on the right who immediately decided it had to be something different, and we'll talk about it. We'll wrap it up.
After the devastating collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore this week, many conservative voices insisted that it could not have been just an accident. CPAC Chairman Matt Schlapp suggested it was caused by drug-addled workers. Conspiracy theory advocate Lara Logan claimed it was a terrorist attack. And Fox Business anchor and granddaughter of Italian immigrants, Maria Bartiromo, said the problem could be migration.
The ship involved in the collapse of the bridge is 948 feet long, called the Dolly, a Singaporean flagged container. But of course, you've been talking a lot about the potential for wrongdoing or potential for foul play, given the wide open border.
These grotesque accusations are part of a rightward shift in America, where the majority of our problems are laid at the feet of people Republicans claim have broken into the country like burglars to steal jobs and money from the real Americans.
So, Val, that's Joy Reid there talking about the mayor of Baltimore was getting threats from our sick neighbors. Then you heard people say it had to do with DEI. Then you heard people say it had to do with immigration. Why can't it just be that the steering was lost on the damn ship and it hit the abutment, like you said? And whatever, and the people working on the bridge, you know, people were criticizing those people. I mean, have we just gotten to the point where those? And again, let me back up, because I say this all the time. This is not the worst period of time ever in the history of America. It is bad, and there's. I think being a slave was pretty bad, right? I think Jim Crow was pretty bad. So we passed that part. However, there are people in this society who just can't get along with anybody and want to blame everybody for everything. So now that I backed up, cleaned that up a little bit. Now, these people who do blame immigrants and DEI and the young black mayor in Baltimore, when there's no reason to blame him, you know, what do we do, Val? I mean, it's really frustrating. You know, we talk all the time about, you know, what our position is, and I'm sure a lot of people think we're off our rocker, but these people seem to just be frigging crazy, and always has to be a conspiracy about everything.
Well, they are beholden to certain issues that tie in with their following, Ed. I think that's the best way I can wrap it up. They know there are certain issues that their following takes on just about every issue that comes down. There are certain positions that their following takes on these issues. And when it comes to things like religion, when it comes to things like race relations, and when it comes to immigration, when it comes to taxes, they know which side of the bread holds the butter, which side their bread is buttered on. They know that. So they have to take, they're boxed in a corner. They have to take these positions that their followers have already taken, the place that their followers are. And what they have to do, and to your point, it's difficult sometimes to take some of those positions. So they have to put some yeast in it, as we used to say back in the day. They have to put yeast in it to make it sound right. And in doing so, they make it sound so ludicrous that we wonder, sane people wonder, how in the world is anybody supposed to believe that? It makes no sense.
Yep.
It is crazy. Why are they taking these positions? Well, get back to the beginning. This is where they perceive their following to be. And they have to take these positions to keep the base in line, to keep their base thinking, I'm still for you. You still got to go to the polls and vote for me. You still got to send me money, regardless of what it's for. Send me money. I need help. Go to the polls and vote for me. So they've got to do that. That's a 24/7 job. They can't ever stop. They can ever not do that.
Right.
So they're in a pickle. They're in a pickle. They got to keep doing this stupid stuff that we sane people see as stupid. We can't figure it out, but they are in a box. They got to keep doing it, and they don't care. They got Donald Trump. He held up an upside down Bible, and we said, "Oh my God, that's terrible. He's horrible." Now he's selling Bibles. You know,
well,
what's next?
Well, since you said that, here's Donald Trump selling Bibles.
Yeah.
Strapped with hundreds of millions of dollars in legal fees and court judgments, former President Donald Trump has turned to selling Bibles online.
Americans need a Bible in their home, and I have many. It's my favorite book. It's a lot of people's favorite book.
For $59.99, Trump is now hawking what he calls the God Bless the USA Bible that includes texts of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence.
Proud to endorse and encourage you to get this Bible. We must make America pray again.
President Trump famously held the Bible upside down after police cleared Lafayette Park during protests. The Bible is a licensing deal. Trump will collect royalties, meaning proceeds of this Bible will go into the former president's pocket.
Val? What the hell? I mean, you know, you can get Bibles for free. You can get the Constitution for free. You can get the Declaration of Independence for free. You can get the Pledge of Allegiance for free. It's all public domain stuff. And so Lee Greenwood, who is Trump's friend, he says, and a great patriot in America because of his song, God Bless the USA, was actually selling these Bibles before. But I think what's happened here is Donald Trump needs money, right? So he probably, his buddy, Lee Greenwood, decides he's going to help Trump out by resurrecting. I guess it's an odd date for me to talk about resurrection. Resurrect his scheme that he was doing a few years ago. Lee Greenwood was doing this and he got no traction on it. So he goes to Donald Trump and says, hey, help me hawk these Bibles for $59.99 that cost $2.10 to make. And God knows, you know, where the money's going to. And also, God only knows who would be stupid enough to buy that thing. So let's start there, Val. Who's buying this Bible? And who's buying that Donald Trump actually knows anything about the Bible?
They're called right-wingers, Ed, and a part of their mantra has to do with religion. And most of them, we used to call them right-wing Christian evangelicals. We just call some of them kooks now, but not all of them are. But that's the label that we've given them. But they are so hung up on the Bible and Christianity and religion in such a way that anybody who professes that I'm in your corner about this, they're gullible and they go that way. Donald Trump seized on this many years ago, even before he walked down the elevator. He knew there were certain, came down the escalator, I should say. He knew that there were certain predilections that conservative Americans had, that if you tie your message, your mantra into that, you can get them to follow you like a ring in the nose around any issue and anything. And I tell you, it goes to show, Ed, how gullible some Americans are. Trump has had these people since he took that stroll down the escalator, and he still got them. And it's a large part of the American electorate. Poll after poll that has been coming out recently is showing Donald Trump with a lead over Joe Biden. And I know some of the polls are garbage because it doesn't take in consideration the number of subject matters or the representation of the poll and those sorts of things. And it's a push poll, as we used to call it, because of the way the questions are designed. But at any rate, they still keep coming out with Joe Biden on the bottom. And I know a lot of people got issues with his age, and a lot of them are just on the other side because they are conservative Republicans, but it still keeps coming out Trump. He's got him. He's got him, and it ain't a whole lot that can be done about it. And somewhere later on in the show, we have some other things to talk about that I will bring up, how all of this ties in together. The Trump is the whole message about that we mentioned about DEI, the whole piece about how we struggle with having choice about religion and all of those kinds of things. All of that ties in together. And we'll talk about it soon.
Yeah, I want to remind you, you're listening to The Deal with Ed Clark and Val Atkinson. It's Sunday, March 31st, 2024. It's Easter. We were talking about the Bible and religion in a whole different context today. Donald Trump, who likes to hold Bibles upside down and say stuff like 2 Corinthians and stuff like that, and can't name his favorite Bible verse when he says it's his favorite book and so on and so forth, has been able to use religion in a way that you know, should be seen as cynical to the average person. But I will submit to you, Val, that and I've said this, you know, you've been knowing me for 30 years now, and in my writing in the whole 40 years that I've been doing this as I guess a professional at this, commentator, is that I have been clear that I believe that American Christianity is a subset of the broader term Christianity, that especially within the evangelical wing, that it's more about America and less about Christianity. Jesus just happens to be a prop, right? They will use Jesus's name to justify damn near anything, because Jesus has this special relationship with America. And I don't know how you get there, but supposedly this manifest destiny, when Christopher Columbus stumbled on Hispaniola and didn't even come to America, and then the Pilgrims, you know, stumble on Plymouth Rock, and then when the English stumble on the Tidewater area in Virginia, Jamestown, and all these people start coming, somehow it's inspired by some guy who lived in Palestine. And that this man from Palestine, who was seeking to overthrow Roman authority over the people in Palestine, somehow has configurated himself into the savior for American values, right? And the American value was that they did not want taxation without representation, which was their biggest issue. because and they didn't want soldiers to quarter in their house and stuff like that. But the American Revolution is an oddity, Val, in that I don't recall that the British were going around just shooting people and subjugating people like most revolutions, right? The American Revolution had to do more about taxes and money and stuff like that, which is very odd, right? When you think about revolution. So I say all that to say, and I'm going to be quiet since it's Easter, and I'll respect people's religious point of view. But American Christianity, especially evangelical stripe, is weird to me. And it has nothing to do with whatever this holiday is today that people are supposed to be celebrating. So I'll leave it at that. And guess what? I hear some music in my ear. So that means we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to finish up talking about some of these things around Donald Trump. But I do want to also talk about this guy named Joe Biden and his running mate, Kamala Harris. They keep coming to visit North Carolina. I want Val to tell me why they keep showing up here. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
I've made the preservation of American democracy the central issue of my presidency. I believe in free and fair elections and the right to vote fairly and have your vote counted. There's something dangerous happening in America. There's an extremist movement that does not share the basic beliefs in our democracy. All of us are being asked right now, what will we do to maintain our democracy? History's watching. The world is watching. And most important, our children and grandchildren will hold us responsible. The Vice President and I have supported voting rights since day one of this administration, and I ask every American to join me in this cause. America is still a place of possibilities, where the power resides with we, the people. That's our soul. We are the United States of America. There is nothing beyond our capacity when we act together. I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
Certainly is a very strategic choice ahead of the election. North Carolina set to play a pivotal role. Both President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris have made many visits, getting very familiar with our state ahead of the election, and those visits are only expected to ramp up. As a matter of fact, we did the math. Since the Biden-Harris administration took office, President Joe Biden has visited North Carolina 8 times, and Vice President Kamala Harris, even more of a frequent visitor to the Tar Heel state, 11 times visiting the state since the administration took office. Most recently, Vice President Harris visiting Black Wall Street in Durham back on March 1st. And then less than 3 weeks later, it was First Lady Jill Biden coming to town speaking about women's health research in Durham. Now, this all comes as Democratic leaders, including Governor Roy Cooper, have really tried to hammer home the case to the Biden campaign that they really believe that the Biden-Harris ticket has a shot in North Carolina. Now, Biden narrowly lost North Carolina to former President Donald Trump back in 2020, but it was a much narrower margin compared to what Trump won in 2016. And
welcome back to our second segment of the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. We're here chopping it up, talking about stuff. If you could hear what we talk about in between, we're going to have to do one of those behind the scenes things because we have some very animated conversations, and I won't tell you what we talked about this time, but it's going to lead to a whole show because we got to talk about some stuff, folks. On the way back in, Val, they should have seen, if you were watching on the video podcast, but on the audio podcast, you heard Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were back in North Carolina again. It's like 8 or 9 times Joe Biden has been here since he's been president, which is kind of unprecedented. Kamala's been here 11 times, something like that, since they've been in D.C. And I think they see a way to win North Carolina. The little skinny colored guy, Barack Obama, he won North Carolina the first go around, and he barely lost the second time. Joe only lost by 1.5% the last time. So, and then there's this guy that you know very well. He happens to be the governor right now in North Carolina, a guy named Roy Cooper. He's on every damn show I turn on. And everybody wants to talk to Roy Cooper all of a sudden. So, number one, tell me why Joe and Kamala keep coming to North Carolina. Am I right about them thinking that it's going to help? And then number two, why does Roy Cooper show up on every damn show there he is to talk about North Carolina?
Well, first of all, let's take that. Why are they here? Is just like you said, Ed. North Carolina is going to be the cowbell for the what we call challenging battleground states in this next election. I mean, we got about 7 or 8 states that are considered battleground states, but North Carolina is going to be at the top of the heap. We are the 9th most populous state. We got 16 electoral college votes, 14 districts, and that's going to be a big, big haul, whoever wins that. You know, those 16 votes, those 16 electoral college votes, whoever wins that. Now, why are they spending so much time here? They want to become regulars. It's easier now because we have a Democratic governor, Governor Roy Cooper, as you said, that can welcome us officially on behalf of the state government of North Carolina. So they're coming here to become household words, to get into the final makings of decision areas, and to get that final vote that may swing everything their way in the electoral count. So I understand why they're coming here. Now, Roy Cooper being the iconic face on television, every channel you choose to turn on, you know, there's a thing called 2028 that's coming up, you know? And regardless of what happens almost here with the 2024 election, there's got to be some front runner out there for 28. I think the powers that be in the Democratic Party are looking over the landscape as to who is a potential top of the ticket, who is a potential running mate for whatever happens in 28. Roy Cooper stands at the top of the heap in all of that conversation. So he is getting the gravitas, the wherewithal, the pull. He is getting the showmanship. He's getting everything he needs right now to come out front in 28. I think that's what this is about. Nobody has asked Roy Cooper, and I hope they don't, because the longer we go thinking that he's just here trying to help Joe Biden, the better it's going to be for him. Because once this conversation changes to, oh, you're just trying to get your foot straight to run in 28. Are you going to run against Kamala Harris if Joe Biden wins in 24 and Kamala Harris is the nominee, the prospective nominee? Are you going to challenge her? Now we have a whole different conversation. We have a divisive conversation. Yeah. So the least we talk about that, the better. But I think that's the reason you asked initially that Biden and Harris keep coming to North Carolina, and why we keep seeing the face of Roy Cooper on every TV channel.
Yeah, but I'm in 100% agreement with you about not going down that road of even asking Roy Cooper about his intents for 28. I think that, you know, just again, I don't want to overstate this, but we are at a sort of existential crisis moment here in America. Not that we haven't been here before. You can't tell me the Vietnam War wasn't an existential crisis. You can't tell me that civil rights movement wasn't either. But here you have forces afoot like Donald Trump, who we talked about in the first segment, who are dangerous, who would foment violence to help themselves out, and in this case, help themselves out of trouble. I want to play a clip real quick of Donald Trump maybe inciting violence here, and then we'll talk about it.
Donald Trump is under fire for a Truth Social post depicting an image of Joe Biden hogtied on the side of a pickup truck. The Democrats say Trump is inciting political violence, comparing the post to the former president's actions on January 6, 2020. That's a claim the Republicans deny.
So, Val, Donald Trump on his Truth Social, whatever the hell he calls that thing, reposted a picture, a video of this guy driving down the road with a image of Joe Biden tied up in the back of a pickup truck. You just saw the clip there, right? And from my perspective, I can make fun of Donald Trump all I want to. I can call him orange. I can, whatever else. But to try to implicate that somebody should be violently attacked or tied up or whatever, they also said hang Mike Pence. So there you go. But this thing that Trump likes to do, where he talks about judges and he makes fun of Fonnie Willis's name and all this other, everything he does, to me is dangerous. I know it only takes a few people, because there were a couple thousand people who were very violent during 1/6, but that was enough to get people killed. People died on 1/6. What is it about this political violence always on the edge with them, the threat of political violence, and then the rank and file Republicans like a Lindsey Graham or somebody like that should be saying something, not saying anything? Why have they just folded and allowed? I mean, I haven't heard anything from those folks about this image that we just saw in the clip. Why are they not talking?
Well, one of the things, we'd have to go one step above that and ask, why are the powers that be, why do they refuse to use whatever measures are within the laws that we govern ourselves by right now? Why haven't some of those measures been used to quell all of these kinds of things, and to not only put gag orders on Trump, but to lock him up for 36 hours or whatever? Why haven't they been used? Simplistic answer. If you look back at our jurisprudence system, we have always had people to look at the preponderance of the evidence and to admit that they were in the wrong, and to punish themselves. To punish themselves by admitting guilt and not having a trial, by resigning from office, by refusing to run for office. They punish themselves. They take a 10-year sentence when they know they didn't commit the crime. That's been our jurisprudence system, and we are used to that. And that's what we want. We forced Nixon into resigning so we wouldn't have to go through an impeachment process. Criminals every day say, I'm guilty, so we won't have to go through a trial. That's what we want with with Trump and Trumpism. We were waiting for somebody to come up and say, we're wrong. We're sorry about that. And we're going to ask your forgiveness, and we're going to make amends for it. And so we keep throwing coal into this steam engine, trying to see when is enough, when they're going to say mea culpa. When is enough that they're going to see that they are wrong and give in and not run for office or resign from office? That's our system. And Trump has figured out that, no, I ain't playing that. You got to do your job and come get me. Let me see you come get me. And I'll rile up my base, which you started this question with. I'll rile up my base. I have them to do all kinds of crazy stuff. And I'll make you think twice about coming to get me. I don't think you have the gonads to come and get me. I am a former president of the United States. You don't have the fortitude to come and get me. Show me that I'm wrong. Prove it to me. I'll do it. You give me a gag order, I'll say the person that gave me the gag order is a stupid idiot. Now, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You're going to do something else? And we keep pouring coal into that engine, Ed, that steam engine, hoping this is going to be enough now to make somebody say, oh, okay, you got me. I'm gonna stop. Okay, I'm gonna do right. And hey, let me tell you something. This steam engine that you pouring coal into is the heart and soul of what keeps them doing what they do. So you are feeding the monster.
Yeah.
You're pouring coal into an engine that's making him stronger. And you think at some point he's going to bow down to your steam. And I don't know how many other ways to say it, but I've been saying it. We've been saying it for a long time now, but that's a losing strategy. This is what Trump has figured out in the beginning about American law, American judicial system, everything else, that we want people to rule themselves. And if you say no, and you got enough power and enough money, they won't come after you because they want you to handle yourself. He's proven that's right.
Yeah.
Now, who's going to be strong enough to say, hey, bullshit, you got 36 hours confinement. Bailiff, take him away. Oh, man, boy, everybody's going to say, woo.
Yeah.
I don't believe it. They put him in jail. And he's breaking the law every day.
Every day. So speaking of that, one last clip then that I had in the pool here that I'm going to play. This is about the appeals court in New York reducing Trump's bond. And then we'll stop talking about that clown. So Val, he needed $450 million, but they said, well, if you come back with 175, we'll call it a bond and yada, yada, yada. But apparently, back to his Bible bullshit, he ain't got no money. And we'll see what happens when he gets to court again on this. But he also has more court stuff to deal with on Monday, which is the beginning of the other trial, the Stormy Daniels, the hush money trial, which the judge said you can't keep delaying this. You have no basis to delay this anymore. We need to get on with this. So here's the irony of all ironies. I think the real strongest cases against Trump, or the ones that would be most meaningful to me, the Jack Smith prosecution on the federal level and the Fonnie Willis prosecution in Georgia should put this guy out of business, period. And they're very strong cases, but those seem to be the ones struggling the most to get the air and oxygen it needs for the fire to burn on it, right? To burn his behind and get him out. We shall see, and I'll make that the last I say about Trump, because I do, before this segment is over, want to start another issue, which is in North Carolina and South Carolina in the same week, legislation went through the House in both, and I haven't been able to read the text, but my thought is that this legislation probably came from ALEC, which is the Republican writers of legislation for states, to end DEI in the state higher education. Let's look at a clip and then we'll talk about it.
Well, right now, a higher education bill in South Carolina is now one step closer to becoming a law. WJCL 22 News' Kai Naveau joining us live this morning. And Kai, I understand this has to do with diversity and inclusion. What can you tell us about it?
Well, Emma, good morning. This bill is moving way faster than anticipated. It passed 84-30 in the House, and those 30 no's were all of the Democratic representative. House Bill 4289, also known to many as the anti-DEI bill, bans the use of diversity pledge in college admissions and job decision. It also no longer requires diversity training and systemizes free speech to ensure people aren't discriminated on, quote, the basis of viewpoint. As both parties disagreed on the bill, they shared their thoughts on X, formerly known as Twitter. The South Carolina House of GOP caucus shared, in a decisive move, South Carolina House Republicans have passed House Bill 4289, signaling a clear stance against DEI ideology influencing college admissions and employment decisions. the Democratic Party shared, we oppose the far-right effort to make our college campuses less diverse, less equitable, and less inclusive.
So, Val, in both North and South Carolina on the same week. How ironic.
Yeah.
Who would have thought that both legislatures would have tried to pass bills saying that you can't do any DEI at public institutions, and then it's sort of amorphous what DEI is to the. It's sort of like when they were kept throwing out, critical race theory or whatever. Again, it's back to that case from University of North Carolina that was in the Supreme Court that the university lost recently. To me, it's been this from day one. Negroes really get the right to vote around 1965. By 1968, Martin Luther King is assassinated. By 1980, you see the first real group of Black students going to PWIs like the University of North Carolina and the University of South Carolina. Remember, Charlie Scott didn't play basketball at UNC until 1969-70 season. Duke didn't have Black players until after that. Alabama, and we'll talk about sports a little bit later. None of those places Negroes could go, right? So you're talking about well into the 90s and 2000s before any real number, but already we had seen a retreat in affirmative action programs, and a lot of states like California didn't even have one. In the affirmative action program that I think everybody's pointing to at the University of North Carolina, and then what they were doing at Harvard and Yale for trying to make some effort at getting a diverse population in. You think that every white person that's ever applied for anything has been denied, and no person should be denied for somebody who isn't qualified, but they never even talk about that. They just hate the whole idea that you may have a level playing field because they don't count the 400 years before when you couldn't go. I have a letter to this day, Val, that my father got from the University of Maryland saying they were not accepting Negro applicants. Now, he became Dr. Clark, but he went to Howard University. And in his graduating class at Howard University, there were Jewish students and other people that couldn't go places at Howard University. He couldn't even get into Georgetown. And he was a devout Catholic altar boy because Georgetown wasn't even accepting Negroes when he tried to go to college. So for people to say that, somehow they're being colorblind and they're trying to make it equal, but you can't even say diversity and inclusion. They want to outlaw the term, Val. You've lived long enough, and I've lived long enough to be born during a time, like I said, when people were getting assassinated, and when you legally couldn't go places, you legally couldn't marry somebody of another race. We were born in our lifetime. So, talk to me about what this is, what they're trying to do in North and South Carolina with this legislation.
Well, all of this is relative to one another, Ed. And let me go back to the early 60s when you had Medgar Evers and the little girls at the 16th Street Baptist Church. And you had Emmett Till and all of this stuff. Then, of course, some of that came after the March on Washington, okay? Then in 1964, you had the 1964 Civil Rights Act. In 1965, there was the assassination of Malcolm X. And nobody has still gotten all of the information about America's involvement in that. We want to write it off and said it was the NOI. But anyway, and we move on to the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Some kind of way in 1968, there's assassination of Martin Luther King, especially after he got to talking about the Vietnam War and all of those other kind of things. So when things happen, other things seem to happen. Going back to your point about, you start talking about critical race theory, they couldn't get a handle on that. because they couldn't answer the question of definition. What is it? You tell me what it is. I don't know. Well, it's terrible. It's terrible. Well, what is it? I don't know. I don't know. Well, it's the same thing here. They figured out in Shelby. They killed the whole 1965 Voting Rights Act by taking out one little block of wood. You know, the wooden towers where you can take out one piece and you keep taking out another to see when it's going to fall and tumble. They took out one little piece, Section 4B of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which killed Section 5. Section 4B determines who comes under the auspices of the act, but Section 5 determines the punishment and pre-clearance, making you send your stuff in about changes before you do it. So that, and if there's no pre-clearance, it kills it. It gives credence to organizations like Alex, you talked about a little earlier. Now Alex can go and do all of the things without pre-clearance, and they become whatever. Now they figure out that, okay, the Supreme Court passed a little thing about affirmative action a little while ago, but was that enough? Let's see if we can go to something called diversity, equity, and inclusion and see what handles that gives people to get rid of things. In North Carolina, we got 5 public institutions of higher education that is run by the state. 5 of them, HBCUs we call them, okay? If we take out the DEI officers and the DEI programs from all of those schools and don't allow the courses to be taught, don't fund the courses to be taught, the professors, the classroom, whatever, you can't use any state money to do any of that kind of stuff. What happens to the programs in these schools? What happens to the positions that are being hired and funded by this program? It's the plug that comes out of that block, okay? And that's why they are pushing DEI. And I hope we become smart enough as a people and whatever to see what they're doing before they do it and put this before the legislature that's got to vote on this stuff that Alex has written up, okay? And write it down, because that's all it's about. It's another Shelby. It's another CRT. It's just called DEI this time.
Yeah. Well, you know, and then you'll have the University of North Carolina at Winston-Salem, and the University of North Carolina at Fayetteville, and the University of North Carolina at Elizabeth City, and the University of North Carolina at Pembroke, which they've already been able to do, and just say, oh, we're just like any other school. There's no need for HBCUs. I think that's the real motivation here, is to grab those up. But you know what? I hear some music in my ears. So when we come back, I want to wrap up and talk about the Supreme Court. And then I also want to talk about the reason why Val's wearing that ugly shirt he has on. If you're listening to it, you can't see it, but he has on a Duke shirt. I have on an NC State shirt. You know I'm a Tar Heel. However, I have no Duke merchandise, and I will not buy any. And we'll talk about that when we get back after this message.
Starting a business, there is no way possible that you can stay on top of the financials, take care of the marketing, perform the work. You need a competent team that can help you to stay on top of your financial situation. My Local CFO is it.
My Local CFO fits a niche that's in today's small business climate. People need good accounting, but they don't need full-time accountants.
My Local CFO, financial solutions for a stronger future.
Entitled Reading the Constitution, Why I Chose Pragmatism, Not Textualism. Justice Breyer, thank you very much for joining us. I want to discuss your book. We're going to get to that. But among other things, you've said that on its current path right now, the Supreme Court is producing, and these are your words, a constitution that no one wants. What are the implications of that for the country?
Well, that's not a good implication for the country. And where I say that frequently was Nino Scalia and I used to discuss in public the differences in our approach to the Constitution.
I remember.
And statutes too. And he would say, I have too complicated a system. Only you, Stephen, can do it. And then I'd say to him, but if we follow you, Nino, we'll have a constitution that no one would want.
And welcome back to our third and final segment of the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. It's 31st of March, 2024. Happy Easter. We've been talking about a range of things. We started out with the bridge collapse in Baltimore and infrastructure and all that stuff. We spent an inordinate amount of time on Donald Trump. You know our rule here. We try to avoid Donald Trump as much as possible, but he is a menace. And without talking about him and trying to get people engaged and understand how important a cog in the wheel of how America runs is going to run through whether or not Joe Biden can fight off Donald Trump and win. We talked about what the polls say. We talked about Joe and Kamala spending a lot of time in North Carolina. And then we just talked about DEI or anti-DEI, as it were, in North Carolina and South Carolina. And on the way back in, played a clip of Justice Stephen Breyer. He has a new book called Reading the Constitution. I want to talk about the court a little bit, Val. One of the things that's been happening is the Republicans have figured out that the court is the key to a lot of this. You don't have Dobbs without Donald Trump winning, right? Because you got to get people on the court. So Stephen Breyer, he didn't want to stay on the court until he fell over dead. Like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, they basically had to prop her up as long as possible, you know, because they had to. I mean, she would not die because she knew the writing was on the wall. And then, you know, I think people did not have the foresight when when white women refused to vote for Hillary. They didn't realize they were putting themselves in jeopardy because it gave, you know, the Republicans a chance to put people on the court. So here's my question about the court. Right now, there are a number of cases that the court has, you know, sort of fast-tracked, and they'll just hear them. Or the other things that in the Supreme Court. And then in the federal courts, what the Republicans have done is they started shopping cases to these one district, you know, one judge courts, like in Texas, where the judge says, "Oh no, you can't take that pill. Oh, yo, I know it's been cleared by the FDA, but you can't take it, so nobody can take it." And this is just one judge in Amarillo, Texas, who was a Trump appointee, but not only was he a Trump appointee, he worked on the Trump campaign, and now he's a federal judge. How do you undo some of this, Val? Because it takes time. It took them damn near 30, 40 years to get themselves to this position. Are you going to tell me it's going to take 30, 40 years for us to undo it, and that way I'll be dead and won't see it either?
Well, let's hope not, Ed. And that's one of the things that I think some of the Biden folks and other non-Trumpers have got to come to the realization of is that there are a couple of things in the Constitution that the framers, they knew something like this was possible. And they gave you remedies for that, but we won't use them. You know, one of them is called fiat. We call them executive orders. The other is martial law, you know, and we get the military involved. But I think people, non-Trumpers think, oh, that's too extreme. We haven't done anything like that since the Civil War. And we're thinking that it might bring on another Civil War if you did that. So let's just go by the rules and the procedures or whatever. Let's try to vote those people out of office. Hey, do you realize what they've done since they've killed the Voting Rights Act? And they got voter suppression and they got gerrymandering and and you're trying to vote them out of office, and they write the rules to say how you vote and who can vote for whom. They pick their own voters, you know, and you're going to vote them out of office. It won't take 30 or 40 years. It's going to take 100 years or so. So we got to think out of the box, Ed.
Yeah.
That's not going to work to play. They have figured out how do you block the rules from being implemented against me as I'm stealing other stuff. Yeah. How do you do that? And they figured out how to do it. And now you're still trying to go by the law to convict them, and they've already blocked you from implementing the law. And you're still trying to figure out how to do that. So at some point, we've got to stop playing games, and we got to look at fiat and even martial law. We got to go in and change the courts. You talked about the courts. We got to move that up to 12 or even 18. We got to have term limits on the court. We got to go in and change the laws and rules about state legislatures. And we got to do all of that.
Yeah.
Because we've been attacked at the root of our democracy. And all the other rules and playing by the rules, they're out of the window now. We can't do that without waiting another 30, 40, 50 years for it to get better. And I'm going to tell you something. If your plan is to wait that long and play by the rules to correct it and hope more sane people get in office, you're going to lose everything completely.
Yeah.
This will be a complete dictatorship. And once it becomes a dictatorship, you can forget about the word democracy because the dictator won't allow it.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the things that Justice Breyer talked about was this whole notion that these people who hold up the Constitution, like a Clarence Thomas or Justice Alito or Gorsuch, they'll say, well, the founding fathers and, you know, so on and so forth. And, you know, I alluded to it earlier that, you know, a lot of that is just hocus pocus. There is no way for somebody in 1792 or 89 or 76 to even imagine a time with a smartphone or social media or a pill that you could take that could safely terminate a pregnancy if you needed to save the life of a woman. I bet you any amount of money, if you went back and looked at the statistics on how likely it was for a woman to survive multiple births, it was a very rare occasion that you could get through all of those births without either having serious medical complications or dying, right? So they couldn't foresee even a drug like Ozempic that could help you lose weight and reduce your diabetes or whatever, right? Because people died at 40. They didn't make it to our advanced ages, you know, like you know, you can't even imagine any of that. So you're telling me that we need to conduct ourselves based on people who believed in bloodletting, right? You know, George Washington probably went to get his blood let, or they were still drilling holes in people's head to let out humors or whatever from your skull.
Or taking the teeth out of one person's mouth and put it into another.
And put it in another person's mouth. What the hell, Val? And I'm supposed to take people seriously, like in Alabama, where they say that IVF is questionable because if you damage that embryo that's, you know, 5 days old, you've killed a human being. When nobody believes that. Nobody believes that. Because then we got problems about what do you do about sperm that's in a sperm bank? What do you do? You know what I'm saying? They don't say much about that though. But they always got to say something about the egg and the likelihood of life and how you know, women have menstrual cycles every month and they don't have those babies. So what do you do then? Are you supposed to be perpetually pregnant? So I know that, you know, people always allude to the Handmaid's Tale. And if you haven't seen it, the series and book is about this civilization or how American civilization goes to a place where you have to be pregnant. You cannot, you know, under any circumstance not be bearing children. So they force women to have babies. And then so everybody's on the run away from this tyrannical American government because these white men have taken completely over, and then they're eliminating people they don't want. And then they're trying to breed these perfect white babies. Well, somebody tried to do that before, I believe. I think he lived in Germany. And you see how that turned out. And so, you know, I always try to be careful, Val, and not talk about, oh, that's fascist or That's like Hitler. But guess what? It's fascist and it's like Hitler. The shit they've been doing in Alabama and judge shopping, going to Texas and finding that idiot in Amarillo to say that an FDA approved drug that's been on the market for 40 years has been safe, tested, whatever, you can't use it. They may decide that you, again, can't take Ozempic because it's not natural or whatever their excuse is, right? Or that Jesus wouldn't want you to do it because these people have an in with Jesus, right? They're buddies with Jesus. So they know exactly how he's going to react. And of course, Jesus doesn't want to do anything that's not American. We already went over that, Val. The religion evangelical bent that Americans are on, particularly in the party they call Republican right now, is dangerous. I do not want to live in a theocracy. Again, it's a little bit ironic we're talking about this on Easter, but it's probably the best time to talk about it. Mm-hmm. Jesus is not, whatever you think Jesus is in terms of deity, Jesus is not a stand-in for Donald Trump. He's not. And there are people who I see on TV every day, Val, who say Donald Trump and Jesus in the same sentence. And then we already went over this clown selling Bible. So that's all I got to say about that. I am very concerned that the Supreme Court balance is so far off that, again, in my lifetime, we may not be able to get to some stasis in having more justices on the court, which brings me to my history question for today, Professor Atkinson. The court, in my reading, the court, when it first started, had justices assigned to districts. And they still use that method when it comes like to death penalty case. They'll say, okay, justice, you got 4, 6, and 5. And this justice over here, you got, 1 and 2, whatever. And the reason why is the Supreme Court justices used to actually go to the district and they would hear cases or whatever. Clearly, we've gotten away from that. But why did we never add additional justices to keep up with the number of districts? Because now I know there's an 11th court, a 10th court, 11th court, the 12th. Why don't we have any more justices? What's kept us from keeping up with the tradition, which was to having a justice for every district?
Yeah, it's the thought in America that if you change anything about our system, our governmental system that's been in place for a long time, then you are changing America, and it can never grow because we're trying to catch up with places like France and the UK and Germany and Scandinavian countries, Russia, China, all of those places that have had long-running governments. And, we've been here less than 250 years. And we can't keep up or catch up with those people if we keep changing our government. So we got to get a government and let it stay like it is and show everybody that here is an example of a successful government that doesn't need changing because it's already perfect. So we don't want to change it. And this lack of changing is baked into the system because too many people think that changing things is an admission of something didn't work or something is wrong.
Yeah,
and
well,
in our case about the courts, it is something that's wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some shit ain't working.
You got 6 conservative justices that you show me the case and I can tell you how the court is going to rule.
Right.
And I'll bet you money and give you odds that I'm right most of the time.
Yeah. Well, here's the clearest sign that this is some bullshit. Clarence Thomas spent damn near 30 years not saying a damn word. And as soon as they had the majority in the lockdown, this Negro talks all the time. And usually he's the first one to talk now. Before, he didn't say a word at all because he knew that there were people on there who would ask rational questions. Now he gets on there and grandstands nearly and again, I'm the weird person. I listen to oral arguments from the court. And nearly every time he starts off because, and I think even Robert's just giving up on trying to, get other people to ask the first question because he knows Clarence is, but he does it so he sets up the straw man. He'll say, well, the founding fathers. He almost always starts out with that bullshit. I live in 2024. I do not want people who were living in 1789 dictating how I should live. Because like I said, when I went to the doctor for my regular visit on Friday, my doctor didn't offer bloodletting as a as a treatment, right? Or she didn't, want me to take some whatever that's opium or whatever to treat my knee pain. Raw opium or something. It's just crazy to me. And I'll leave it at that, Val. Before we run out of time, I want to talk about something near and dear to your heart. The loss of the Duke Blue Devils. I'm sorry, they haven't lost yet because we were recording it before. The Duke Blue Devils playing the NC State Wolfpack. Now, again, full disclosure, I am a Tar Heel fan. I generally wear Tar Heel blue. I do have NC State gear because I've had relatives who played at NC State in various sports. Unfortunately, they made the wrong decision, but it's okay. Let's talk about what we talked about a little bit last week. You had some predictions about how the tournament was going to turn out. And I didn't fill out a bracket, but I thought Houston had the best chance of winning. But now that things have gone on, it looks like UConn is going to stroll back in there. You never know what's going to happen, but it looks like UConn is going to stroll back in there. And by the time some people watch this, we're going to have it posted before the game starts. But the game between Duke and NC State, I think, however, is the most interesting game of the whole tournament. You have an 11 seed in NC State. It harkens back to the 83 Wolfpack. They have been tremendous for the last month. They just can't lose. And there's only been a couple times in the tournament so far where they were a little bit shaky, but for the most part, they've been rock solid. Not what you want to happen, but what do you think will happen with the NC State Duke game?
Well, I think I've been a Duke fan since 1983, and I'm not going to waver, and I'm pulling for Duke. But I think we went down to the depths of the luck well, if there is such a thing called a lucky well, to pull out a victory against Houston. That was sheer luck. It was an unforced error. It's nothing we did to cause Shed to go down or whatever. We didn't trick him into doing anything. And with Roberts out for almost the entire first half, and with Shed out for the entire second half, this is not the same Duke team. I'm sorry, not the same Houston team. So we got a little lucky, but I'll take the luck. Now, based on that luck, I'm not sure if we're going to get lucky again, but that's what we're going to need in order to beat State. We're going to need a little help. We're going to need a little luck. And we'll see what happens. But right now, if you tie me down and make me bet the house and that kind of thing, I would have to go with Duke to win the game. I've thought it over. I think we may get enough luck so that State, being that this is our fourth time playing them, and we've won one and they've won two. I think now is the time for that to flip over. Yeah. And one of the things that State has going for them, they've been playing for the last few games teams that have never seen them before and have underestimated them. And they said, no, we ain't that. I'm going to show you what we are. Now they go into the Duke game. These are guys that this is the fourth time they're playing us. Ain't no secrets. with nobody. Everybody know what's going on. And I think State kind of reverts back to the old state that they have been, which may be problematic for them.
Yeah.
But if they could play up to this 1983 kind of level that they've been playing at for the last 7, 8, 9, 10 games, they got a good chance of beating Duke. But I just think they'll revert back to the old state in this game, and I think Duke's going to win.
Yeah, well, that's my assessment too, Val. I've been thinking about it too. I think their time is probably just running out. They should be tired on top of everything else. Filipowski seems to be healthy, and that could be enough to throw Barnes in the middle, and yada yada yada. He won't be able to push Filipowski around, I don't think, and just back him down and make those shots he's been making. And State did have some problems from the perimeter in the last game. It took them a while to get warmed up. They won't have the luxury of not being warm from the beginning. I think Duke's ready for him, like you said. Anyway, enough of that. But I think the bottom line is I think UConn is the prohibitive favorite to win the whole thing. I don't know what Danny Hurley is feeding them, but them boys were jumping out of the gym and blocking shots and dunking and all kinds of. They were running the whole time and just ran Illinois out the gym, scored 30 straight points. When does that happen? Especially at that level. So anyway, in an Elite Eight game, you know what I'm saying? So, anyway, Val, we've squandered everybody's hour. We do appreciate you coming in. We gain listeners and followers every week. I'd like for you to subscribe. So that's the easiest way to do it. Just subscribe on one of the platforms. Then you don't have to worry about when we're on. You'll get a notification and you'll see. So YouTube, Spotify, whatever, all the platforms we're on. You can also go to the website, thedealwithedcarter.com. I'm going to do some writing this week. I've been remiss in keeping up with my writing. Val, of course, I'm finishing up his latest book, and we'll give you all the information about where the book signings and all that stuff are going to be coming up. So in the meantime, go out and do something good for somebody today. And I really do mean that. And we'll see you the next time. Thank you for watching The Deal.